Good morning. Hopefully you received your financial packet yesterday afternoon. Just a couple of items to point out. The retainage is, on the LGIP side on the assets has been adjusted for the minimal interest that has been earned in March, but that does reflect that balance owed to the contractor plus the interest earnings. On the income statement or the statement of revenues and expenses, just a couple of items to point out. In your maintenance and repairs equipment, that $6,100 includes repairs to the dozer of just over $5,300. In maintenance and repair scales, that $600 is a new scale printer and some toner. The rentals, $4,300, or $4,800, I'm sorry. I have glasses, but apparently they're not helping because threes look like eights and vice versa. Anyway, in that total is just under $4,500 for rental of the Komatsu loader. And then in your capital expenditures, the $64,000, that's where the skid steer track loader has been received, and that is net of the $20,000 trade-in for the T590 Bobcat. So we have a decrease in net position of just under $23,000 for the month. If there's any questions, I'm happy to address them.
One question on the retainage, is that total left to pay for the closure, or is there additional amounts?
I do think there's additional, that's just the retainage. I think there's another payout outstanding.
How much that is? I don't know. Okay.
I don't know that off the top of my head either.
Okay.
We've been trying to get that submitted, but
Okay.
we've also got one over here in town that we're trying to get submitted, and one from them, and then a job from 2 years ago that we're trying to get them submitted finally.
You think they would want to submit that? Okay. Any questions of Amy? Okay. If not, we'll move on to Dennis.
Good morning. We haven't had our monthly inspection yet from the state, but a couple things. This is, if they decide to go through with the expansion and stuff, you have some literature on some alternative materials we can use for the drainage layer. And if it works out okay, the savings could be quite substantial, and there may even be some money from the state. They may even pay for some of this material.
It's like a grant, so to speak?
Sort of.
Part of the tire grant.
I'd never heard of it till I looked into this, but talking to him, he said they do it all the time in Georgia.
Yep.
Or do you use that instead of gravel, or is it?
That's just ground up tire chips.
What's it replace though? Is that
Stone.
Stone.
For the drainage layer.
For 2 foot of stone.
So
Can you use a total of 2 foot of the tires, or you have to use so much stone?
We use tires for about 11 acres of cell in Georgia. It works fine. There's nothing to worry about or stress about. It works just fine. I've never had any issues with it.
Are you putting anything between the tires and your membrane?
They put the fabric over that
Just
because
the
there is
fabric.
pieces of steel in some of those tires, yes, so that to protect
So
that.
just the fabric of it. So
Or you can put a small layer of stone down versus 2 foot of stone, like 6
2
inches
foot
or
of
8 inches.
tires, you put 6 inches of stone on top of the tires?
And then finish out your grade with the tires, yeah.
You want to protect the liner.
Yeah.
Right, so it doesn't get any...
Sand can be used too for that on top of it.
They don't strip the belts out of it for the chips?
I just put them in the big thing and
Yeah,
it just tears them up.
A lot of the metal is removed from it. It is. They don't have a great deal of metal that's left in them, but there is some.
So you could put some erosion matting down prior to putting that
Yeah.
liner down?
And it could be substantial.
The metal is their biggest money maker up there where we went and looked at that shredder.
Yeah.
They do it with a magnet.
Like they used to do in the coal strip pits.
Yeah. Run it
Pull the
through a
magnet
conveyor belt a couple of times and the main picks up the biggest part of it.
We need to look into that for sure.
Yes.
Absolutely.
We got an email from, Paula, and she goes through and explains
You
what's
all
got to
have
be
that
done.
email.
I think you've got that, and then we've got the, information that was sent by, I guess it's Patriots Engineer. But they'll have to provide additional, analysis based on the ASTM spec.
So what we would do then is spec that material in the expansion project, correct?
Spec it as an alternate,
Okay.
because if you run out, then you have to have a base, which will be the stone, spec in it. And then, as before they bring it down here, they'll have to run the ASTM, the ASTM test on it to make sure it meets that spec.
Yes, I'm looking, it's $24 a ton. Is that delivered?
Delivered,
That's
yes.
delivered. So compared to stone's what delivered right now? 57 is
It's,
28.
it's up there, it's a little higher.
My question is,
This will go twice as far.
that's what I'm asking you.
Yeah.
That the
Almost
tires are a lot more.
Almost twice as far, so you're almost getting 2 loads per ton.
So it's equivalent to, say, a ton and a half of stone is a ton of.
Yeah, if you had 20 ton of tire chips and you bought 20 ton of rock, the mass wise, volume wise, you would almost be at 40 ton. It's almost
That's
twice,
huge, David.
almost twice.
Well, is the $25 a ton for stone, is that for your granite or just
No.
57?
That's just the price I got. He didn't have the price for a granite,
Yeah,
so
so you
which
gotta
that
use
could be
that.
higher.
You gotta use that granite
Yeah, it's gotta be a higher.
because the leachate will eat the limestone. So you gotta use it, well, they call it a low carbonate. There's a granite, and then, there's a river rock that you can use for it, but it's hard to find. East Tennessee Turf got theirs for the French drain. They had to go to Watauga to a quarry and get it, which is up outside of Elizabeth.
Is that like railroad ballast? It's granite.
Yeah. No, it's just graded smaller.
Yeah.
I think Maymead, has got the quarry up there. But then there's another one in Kentucky that's about the only two I know of that you can get the granite material out of. So
The north you get, the more granite there is.
it's more of a savings than just the difference between it and
Sure,
limestone.
it could be substantial.
Yeah.
So my quote on $28 is off. I
Probably a
didn't
little.
realize you had to use the granite stuff.
Well, it just,
So your trucking's gonna be way higher if you got.
in the bottom, because again, what they found is that leachate, it breaks that limestone down and it turns it into just
Dust.
it's wet, so it's
Wow.
it's,
Almost like a putty clay.
Yeah, it's like a
Almost
putty.
something like
It doesn't affect the tires though.
no.
Supposedly not. And see, I didn't know anything about this till I started looking into it. And then talked to him and he said, yes, it's been done and Georgia's done it.
Okay. Anything else, Dennis?
Just a quick reminder, I reached the peak.
Time's
All we
running
gotta
out.
do- Yeah.
Dennis, I know we talked about this, but about running that compactor, but anytime you can get that thing back in there.
I run it every day.
Since we talked,
Well, some, but yeah, I know what you're saying.
that's just a critical piece of equipment, so.
I know, I do know that if you put the garbage in a specific way, any machine can reach the compaction requirements. But I agree with you, and we run it.
Okay.
Yeah, we
But it can't climb them slopes, the way I got it. The reason this thing, why I'm doing what I'm doing, I'm trying to get a road in, because if we go ahead with the expansion, the road that we have now, well, they'll have to cut it off. So I've got to put in a new road. That's the reason why we built the peak, so I can get that new road established. And I appreciate the call. I'm thankful for it. So
Oh,
just-
no, I mean,
anytime you all want to question me on anything,
Well, those compactors, I mean, they're critical to the space in the landfill.
Yeah.
Right, Ron?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you all,
oh, I agree.
every one of them you got, you use a compactor in, don't
I
you?
get my radio, why isn't that compactor moving?
I tell you what, the inspector told me, we had a D8 out on Pine Brook before we got a compactor. He said that compactor gets about 3 or 4 times the compaction of the D8. And I said, the D8 heavier. He said, let me tell you something, I let the D8 run over my foot. He said the weight is dispersed over such a
It's the pads you have. and
bigger
things like that.
area than those.
Cleats,
Yeah.
big deal. Important.
Does it vibrate also?
No.
It doesn't?
No, and we do have the smallest compactor. It would help in the future if we ever get another one, up that size.
Well, if you can lower,
Yeah. It's a little compactor for what it is.
lower your thickness, best, spread it
Yeah,
best
that's
you can, and then run it
Do we
lower.
need to look at any steps to divert anything coming in to give you some time, or is that necessary at this point?
It depends.
I know
It
the
depends.
city is dividing out their brush truckloads, does that help?
I'm sorry,
I know the city divides out what
Yeah.
comes in their brush
Yes.
trucks, does that help?
it helps, yes, anything that,
Would it make a difference if the county did the same thing?
sure would.
Send me all you want.
It sure would.
I'll help you
Keep
where I
it
can.
coming, baby.
If we could, by chance, get it.
You think we could talk to Barry, Bill, and see if we can work on that a little bit?
I've talked to him, about it. He just said he doesn't have the manpower or the equipment, I guess, but
I'll talk to him tomorrow.
I see what he's saying, he's gotta run 2 trucks in the same route, so.
Yeah.
Might have that discussion, because, if it would help us, at least on a temporary basis, it would be worth looking into, I think. Would it make enough of a difference to help, I guess, is my question.
There's a lot of brush goes up there.
There should be none.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, if we eliminate all of that, the restrictions on burning is getting so strict that we may end up having a problem with that down the road.
Right, but while we can, we need to
Yes,
take advantage of it.
yes.
Cause I was out there signing checks, and 4 county trucks come through, and every one of them did this. And that means they go to the top of the hill.
That's right.
And they all had brush and commingled stuff. Not one single truck, while I was out there for an hour talking to you guys, did one go into the burn pit out of the county.
The public needs to be educated, not to,
I
It would help.
totally agree, I totally agree.
because,
There's no, I'll be honest with you, we shouldn't be picking up garbage.
no, but-
Not when we got a can there, and not when it's free if you take it yourself. We shouldn't be picking that up.
Well, when we got the new can, when we got the cans and pick up, if it didn't go in a can, they wouldn't pick it up.
That was the rules.
That was out of.
So now they just put their mattress on the side of the road, we're still picking it up. What we need is somebody to go by and say, hey, you need to take your mattress to the landfill. That ain't our job.
So, I think it's worth a conversation with him.
Yes, it is.
To see, to ask if they do that, so,
Is there any way we could police that a little bit? I mean,
That's
I
the road department. That's a road department issue.
well, I mean, that's what I'm not saying we, I'm saying as a county.
Police.
Well, I mean, the garbage in general piled up on the road versus in the can.
Well, we do that.
I mean, I got a place on my road that dumps, every time they pick it up, the next day there's another pile there, every day. It's always there.
Community dump site.
It's no, it's the same house.
That's what yeah, but
but it's just, yeah.
I don't think they put anything in the can.
I think every neighborhood's got one of those.
Well, I guess you need to go to neighborhood patrol or something.
We had one across from our church and it was there so long where the county used the bucket, it dug a hole.
There's a pond.
About that deep.
Yeah.
So,
Right next to Mount Airy, Salem.
okay, check into that, and if we need to educate the public, I'm not against.
That's what'll have to happen.
If they agree to do it, if we could put something in the paper, do a press release, that would be worthwhile, just to get those things divided out and help them out. But talk to them and see what they can do. Anything else, Dennis?
I think that might cover it. Any questions?
Any questions? Okay, Steve?
Okay. Our April gas monitoring report, I think he's gonna be monitoring this week or early next week, and we'll get that to the state. We got 2 reports from MUS on the ammonia concentrations, and they're back up to about 450, 460, something like that on the last samples we got in the last 2 weeks, which is that same up and down on those. Had a couple other parameters that exceeded the permit, but they seem to be one-offs where we hadn't seen those before, and kind of like it has been, they just pop up all of a sudden and they go away. Our annual TDEC stormwater report, we got the lab results back this week, and that's basically just a submittal to them with the results to TDEC. Same with our annual leachate sample, we got the lab results back, I think, in the last week, so we're getting those pulled together for TDEC. Got the groundwater sampling, that'd be second quarter of the year of last year or first quarter of this year, however they look at it. Got that submitted to TDEC. I got the EPA greenhouse gas report that we have to do every year, completed and submitted. And I'm awaiting comments on that because they usually comment on the same thing and we have to respond with the same thing and then they approve it. The survey for the annual engineering report was completed, and that report's due next week. We'll be submitting it. It does show 16 months capacity left based on strictly on the survey data. The closure, we've had a couple of ditches washed out there. East Tennessee Turf got one repair done. Dennis and I are looking at the matting that they used in those ditches. We're almost sure it was not heavy enough, and I've asked the material supplier that we spec'd for samples, and then we'll meet East Tennessee Turf out there and let them know that they're gonna have to make some repairs at their own cost based on the material they used was not heavy enough. They used the same thing they used on the slopes just to hold them down, and this what we spec'd in those ditches is a lot heavier material. We got the final as-built survey from the RLS completed, and that's all we lack on getting the QA/QC report to TDEC, but they want the ditch repairs done before it's submitted. On the expansion, Part 1 application, you've got a copy of that in your package. We got that to TDEC. They have reviewed it, and the only thing they're lacking is an official approval from the board. Even though the board chairman signed it and it was notarized, they still need something saying the board agrees with it. Had 2 or 3 calls with Ravindra at Washington at TDEC, and we went ahead and resubmitted the hydro report and the current plans without the additional acreage. And we'll be meeting on them tentatively agreed to a meeting next week to go over that stuff. And, again, we've met with their engineer multiple times through this process and addressed comments that he had, so I think we're moving forward really well with that. And I don't know, about 3 conversations with that Patriot Tire engineer, concerning using those chip tires. He has, sent in, I think, you put the information he sent in, and I think I've got a copy of it in the package here. But, again, that's something that, we had originally asked him to get the letter from TDEC approving it, but TDEC says it's gotta come through us. So it'll just be inserted as a part of the,